The sun was sinking low behind the dusty horizon when she staggered out of the saloon, her hand clutching the edge of the weathered doorway for balance. The air was thick with smoke and the echoes of laughter and piano keys fading inside. But her world spun too violently to notice. Her bonnet had slipped loose, dark strands of hair falling across her face, her breath shallow and uneven. Then, without another step to take, she collapsed on the wooden steps of the saloon, her body folding against the worn boards that had seen countless boots, spurs, and broken soles. For a moment, no one inside seemed to care. Men were too busy drowning in whiskey, and women too busy hiding their pain behind forced smiles. But out of the shadows at the end of the street, a figure emerged, a cowboy with dust on his boots, strength in his stride, and a gaze that carried both grit and compassion. He saw her lying there, fragile and alone, and without hesitation he rushed forward. Dropping to one knee, he gathered her gently into his arms, his rough hands surprisingly tender as they steadied her head against his chest. "I got you," he whispered, his voice steady as the ground beneath them. She stirred, her lips parting, but no sound came. He adjusted his hat with one hand and brushed the hair from her face with the other, determination etching every line of his rugged features. She didn't know him. Not yet, but in that moment, he became her anchor in a world that had let her fall too many times. The townsfolk soon gathered, murmuring questions, curiosity pulling them from their distractions. "Who is she? What happened? Ain't nobody gonna help?" The cowboy didn't answer. He simply stood tall, cradling her as though she weighed nothing more than a feather. His eyes swept across the crowd, daring anyone to challenge his claim. And when no one stepped forward, he shifted her carefully, lifting her fully into his arms. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was someone who needed saving, and he was the kind of man who didn't walk away. The steps of the saloon had become her breaking point, but in his arms, she would find her new beginning. He carried her past the gawking crowd, his boots striking firm against the wooden planks, the rhythm of a man with purpose. As he walked, her head rested against his chest, her fragile breaths sinking with the steady beat of his heart. Every step he took seemed to whisper a vow she would never fall alone again. The people watched him fade into the distance, whispers following like dust in the wind. But he didn't care. All he cared about was the woman who had collapsed, the woman fate had laid in his path. Later that night, when she awoke in the safety of a small cabin, the first thing she saw was the flicker of a lamp and the broad silhouette of the cowboy seated by her side. His hat rested on the table, his eyes watchful but soft, as though he'd been guarding her while she slept. Confusion clouded her expression, but before she could speak, he leaned forward. "You don't need to explain," he said. "You don't need to carry it alone." She blinked back tears she hadn't even known were falling, her voice trembling. Why would you care? No one else ever has." The cowboy leaned closer, his voice steady, almost like a promise carved into stone. "Because everyone deserves someone who won't let them fall. Maybe you don't believe that yet, but I do. And until you do, I'll stand for you." She turned her face toward him, searching for any trace of mockery. But all she found was truth. It scared her and comforted her all at once. For the first time in years, she felt the fragile flicker of hope inside her chest. From that day on, their story became one of strength, hers, in learning to rise again, and his, in holding her steady until she did. He taught her how to ride, not just a horse, but the storms of life. He showed her that scars weren't weakness, they were proof she had survived. And though the saloon steps had been where she collapsed, his arms became the place where she learned to stand tall once more. People in town whispered about them, some with envy, some with awe. But none could deny the truth. They had seen a broken woman fall, and a cowboy rise to catch her. In a world where too many turned their backs, he chose to stay. He chose to fight for her when she had nothing left to fight with. He chose to never let her fall again, and that choice changed everything. So when you hear this story, let it remind you, life will test you. It will knock you down sometimes when you least expect it. But somewhere out there is a hand that will reach for you, a heart that won't let you go, and a strength that will remind you of your own. Maybe that cowboy is someone in your life already. Or maybe one day you'll meet them when you need it most. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be that cowboy for someone else. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how many times we fall, but who stands beside us when we do. And before you go, my friend, if this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that hope can rise from the dust, make sure to hit that subscribe button. Join us for more stories of courage, love, and second chances. Because sometimes, all it takes is one moment, one choice, one person, to change a life forever. Subscribe now, and let's keep riding this trail of stories together.